This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the president and CEO of Skyharbour Resources, Mr. Jordan Trimble. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again.
I'm glad it's fall. It's been a tough summer for the uranium equities. Despite that, the top management teams do what top management teams do, and that's add value to existing projects, continue to develop them and advance them. And the real good management teams, frankly, go out and put their money where their mouth is. They eat their own cooking. They buy shares of their own company. You check all three of those boxes, Jordan. So first off, let me start by saying I know it's been tough share price-wise, but that shouldn't be confused for a lack of work or development, especially in regards to the flagship, the Moore project, obviously. Can we talk about that a little bit? You had some news today. You completed an airborne geophysics survey, and you obviously have plans, upcoming plans for drilling at the high-grade Moore uranium project. Important piece of news. And then let's talk about your time on the road recently, because it's been pretty substantial. But let's start with the news first.
Yeah, absolutely. So this morning we announced upcoming 2,500 meter drill program. This is an important program for us for a number of reasons. One, the last program we carried out, we intersected our highest grade mineralization in the underlying basement rock at the Maverick corridor at the East Maverick zone, about 2.3% over 2.5 meters. And that was one of the last drill holes in the program. It was really a new discovery in the basement rock, and we've been keen to get back and follow up on that. Now, this recent geophysics that we've just completed has shed some new light on this area and other areas on that 4-kilometer long Maverick corridor. What we're looking for there is high-grade mineralization in these feeder zones, in the underlying basement rock. And what we're looking for are cross-cutting features or structures that allow more fluids to come up. And it looks like we've identified a handful of these, including at the East Maverick zone, as well further up to the northeast at another target called the Viper target. So these are top priority targets that we're going to be drill testing. As we've spoken before, we believe there's a much larger, higher grade deposit to be found at depth in the basement rock. When you're getting upwards of 21% U3O8 at the unconformity in the sandstone, it's come from below, it's come from a source, and we think we're right there. So a real important drill program coming up for us could be a game changer if we're able to find a larger zone of higher grade mineralization. We think we can. And in the news release, we outlined the plans for this program. So we got the Maverick East target, as I just mentioned, as well as the Viper zone, which is about 1.5 to 2 kilometers northeast of the Maverick zone. And then interestingly, in the last program, we had a regional target that we had really what we deemed to be a new discovery. It's what's called the Otter zone. Now, this is about 9 kilometers away from the main Maverick zone and where the high grade is. And so it's on a different corridor, conductive corridor. Hadn't seen any drilling since the 80s, and we went back in there and drilled a few holes and had anomalous mineralization in the basement rock. So we are going to do some follow-up drilling there as well and hope to find more high grade on the project. So a good, solid plan going forward. Again, like I said, I think it can be a game changer for us, especially given the market value and current capitalization. I think we can see a significant move up with a couple of good drill holes.
You took my next question, because I was keen to ask you about the Otter zone, and that target is particularly compelling to me as it relates to success at the Maverick target. And the reason is this: the Otter zone is actually on land. So again, this is me getting way ahead of myself, but let's assume that there's success at Maverick, and then you can follow that up with success at the Otter zone. The Otter zone is accessible year round, right? It's on the landward portion that you can explore basically all seasons. Is that accurate?
Well, both actually. Most targets on the project are land-based, and we can access them all year round. The Maverick zone and corridor, the vast majority of the targets are land-based, and so we can get at them all year round. It's actually quite easy to work there. It's not swampy. It's higher ground. So yeah, no, most of the targets we're drilling, and that's a part of the target selection process. Most of the targets we are drilling are land-based.
Excellent, and that's an important point to make. Let's talk about the share price a bit. It's obviously been a tough go the last couple of months. We do have some potential catalysts coming up. You and I spoke a little bit off the record the last time we chatted, Jordan, about the fact that despite the fact that you don't have any exposure to the U.S. uranium market, you were hit pretty hard after the Section 232 news. I know that you've been on the road. Can you talk a bit about the sentiment out there and upcoming catalyst on a macro level and just your general take on it?
Yeah, so like most of our peers and other non-U.S. companies, we've seen a pullback post 232, bit of a head scratcher. I think, that's certainly the feedback I've gotten from a lot of people and a lot of other companies that don't have assets in the U.S. Clearly what's happened is money that came in over the last year and a half, that was buying all the uranium companies. I mean, you got to remember, this is a relatively small sector. So money that comes in, especially if it's institutional money, is going to spread it around, and they're not just going to buy one or two names. And so that's what happened. We saw that happen a year ago when we were hitting our 52-week highs, and they were coming in on a trade. It was an event-based trade and money that came into the sector. And so when 232, the decision was announced, which was unexpected for most market participants in the uranium sector, we've had to see those positions unwound. And, needless to say, as a small cap, relatively illiquid name compared to the larger cap names, you obviously see an impact in the share price. And so I think we've seen the dust settle, as you'll see with my insiders. I've been buying quite a bit recently and will continue to do so. I think it's overdone. And I think given the upcoming catalysts that we have, company specific with our drilling and our partner companies, don't forget we have two partner companies that are planning exploration programs here in the near future as well, Orano and Azincourt at our Preston and East Preston projects. That's quite a bit of upcoming news flow. And to complement that, and we'll talk a little bit more about my time at the WNA, there are some pretty significant near-term macro catalysts in the space, one of which being Cameco having to buy upwards of 12 million pounds in the short term. And just to highlight that point, again, I go back to a year ago when we saw strength in the sector. We saw the spot price ticking up. And we saw a lot of the uranium stocks hitting 52-week highs. A big part of that spot price increase was Cameco buying about 8 million pounds in the spot market. And that's what drove the equities higher. And so we're now in a situation where, the reset button's been hit a bit on valuations across the board, yet we see Cameco in a position where they are going to have to acquire some portion of that, I would think, in the spot market in the near term. So there's a good case to be had for a much higher spot price in short order.
Excellent. Let's talk about the WNA. How was the sentiment there?
Yeah, the sentiment, it was interesting. I mean, I definitely say from the mining company perspective, it was much better. You got to remember the WNA, World Nuclear Association. You have obviously the uranium mining companies, but you have the fuel buyers, utilities as well, and companies that work in the fuel cycle, enrichment and conversion, so on and so forth. So it's really the whole industry, if you will. So the uranium mining side of it, the supply side, is just one part that's represented. But why I say it was, I think, positive for the uranium mining companies was they do a biannual nuclear fuel report. And this was definitely a highlight or takeaway for any uranium mining company. They issued it, and for the first time since Fukushima, we see demand. They project demand increasing in the upper, mid, and lower case. Previously, we had not seen that in the lower case, and in the upper case, we see a doubling of demand over the next 20 years. And in the base case, we see an increase of about 50%. So pretty significant. But I think that lower case is worth noting, because what that's showing is that these plant closures are taking a lot longer. And it also is showing how sticky the industry is. These nuclear power plants can operate for many, many years. There's a handful that have operated for over 50 years. So that demand side is continuing to grow, especially in places like China, like India, and the developing world, as we've spoken about before. It still very much is a growth story. And then when we look at the supply side, and it's important to note, the WNA, which is one of the go-to sources of information for the nuclear industry, because of antitrust law, they can't speculate or factor in the price of the commodity and the cost of mining, cost of extraction. So when they forecast their supply going forward, previously they've had a lot of projects that quite honestly just are never going to see the light of day.
Sure.
Unless you see a much higher uranium price. Well, they still can't factor that in, but they have addressed it now. And that's included a couple things that they've done. They've accounted for idled mines, right? Because we have seen some major shutdowns, including the McArthur River and other mines globally that are responding to this low price environment. And one note on McArthur River, and Cameco stated this, turning the light switch back on simply just isn't that easy. There's 1,000 employees that were laid off. These are highly skilled employees. They got to get recertified, rehired. So that's going to take time to turn that mine back on, which was the largest producing mine in the world. And then they also talk about this unspecified supply. So when you see the supply demand, there's a pretty significant supply deficit, and that needs to be met by, as they deem, unspecified supply. And that at least addresses this issue of price. The price of the commodity is simply too low at $25, $26 a pound in the spot market. That does not incentivize new production to come online. The average global cost of production is much higher. So we're going to have to see the price increase. And as I pointed out earlier, I think there's good rationale right now to see that price higher in the shorter term versus the longer term.
Jordan, always insightful. I appreciate it. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it. Again, I'll just re-highlight, our upcoming drill program. As I said, this could be this is a big program for us, testing these targets in the basement rock. We truly believe there is something much larger and higher grade to be found at depth. And keep in mind, it's still relatively shallow. We're only talking about 300 to 350 meters. The unconformity being at about 260, 270 meters. So the drill program that we have coming up, as well as our partner companies, Orano planning a program coming up, a fairly large program, and Azincourt recently announcing also a 2,000 to 2,500 meter drill program at our East Preston project. We have some option payments coming in as well over the next 6 months from partner companies. So we're in good shape here. We have a lot of news flow in the near term coming up. And as I said, I think we're going to be in a good backdrop with potentially the spot price ticking up on the back of Cameco buying and potentially utilities coming into the market as well.
Excellent. Good work, Jordan. Thank you again.
Thank you.